Hello everyone! We have called this video Cut and Paste Ornaments because several musical treatises from the 16th and 17th century tell us about memorizing ornaments, servírsene, pillarne copia, that stands for serve yourself, or take a copy of an ornament. Perhaps the most enlightening source telling us about the way we could approach other ornamentation sources is the small book called Breve e facile maniera di esercitarsi a far passaggi, Brief and Easy Ways to Exercise Passaggi, written by Giovanni Luca Conforto, a singer of the Papal Chapel at the end of the 16th century. Conforto talks about several concepts related to how to use his book. For example, Conforto says that the very first interval of his book is placed after all existing clefs to make it clear that the note he writes can be called anything. That is to say, it can be any note. Likewise, this interval, which at the beginning is an ascending second, can be major or minor. That is to say, it can be of a tone or a half tone. Furthermore, we can interpret the ornament he writes with flexible beats and rhythms. For instance, a semi-brief can be considered a minim, thus doubling the time. The same semi-brief can be considered a brevis, thus making the ornament twice as long. As if that were not enough, if this semi-brevis is in binary time, we can convert it into ternary time and vice versa. Conforto leaves us with many more great ideas. He argues, for instance, that you can learn diminutions in 9 days because there are 9 important intervals and you can learn 1 interval per day. He says as well that in order to add ornamentation into your interpretation, you just need to be aware of where you want to add this ornamentation and aware of the interval and the harmonies you have. Then go to his book, to that interval, and from there take a copy. And now I would like to show you how you could use Bovicelli's book to improve the authenticity of your interpretation of 17th century music, as well as your own diminution for the Bovicelli Prize of the BOVICELLI Competition. So here we have one of the 2 given pieces for our special Bovicelli Prize, a motet by Tomás Luis de Victoria. As you can see in the beginning, the soprano starts with a descending step, with a major second. If we follow Luca Conforto recommendations, we should just go back to our book, in this case Bovicelli's book, and look for that descending step. You find those descending steps in page 20 of our book, but we see that in this case it's a minor second. If you remember well the recommendations of Luca Conforto, he says that you can consider that step either minor or major. So far, you see that this is a B flat and an A, and we are looking for a G and an F, but we are actually looking for an interval, not for a specific note. So this B flat will be for us right now a G. Furthermore, you see that in the example of Bovicelli, we have a semi-brevis, and in the motet that we want to make diminutions on, our first note is a brevis. Luca Conforto says the same. No matter the rhythm, you can adjust whatever you like, you can use it as you like. So we will consider that the examples in Bovicelli are, in this case, a brevis. If you look carefully, all the examples might fit quite well in this case. Maybe the examples that start a third below, which is called il principiar sotto le note, or also called intonatio, might not pass very well right now in the beginning, as well as a very ornamented example would not pass well in here. So I have chosen this for my own diminution. We move now to bar 2. In bar 2 we have an ascending second. We could continue with our descending examples from Bovicelli and just ending the last note up a step instead of going down a step. But why not? Let's check the actual ascending interval. In the first page of the examples, actually called diversi modi di diminuire, which you find in page 17. We have movimento di grado ascendente. Here as well, we could copy any of these examples into our diminution. I have chosen this. Furthermore, from bar 2 to 3, we have an interval of a third. If we go again to our salto di terza ascendente, so jumps of an ascending third, we find also several options that would fit our beginning with a soft and calm ornamentation. I have chosen this for my version. In bar 3, where the tenor starts, we may eventually think about a longer passage. In here, we see that the main interval of the whole bar is actually again a descending note from B flat to A. So we go back to our page 20 of Bovicelli's book, and we have plenty of examples that could fit this bar. I have chosen actually a combination of this and this because I like the flow of this ornament, but I like the finish of this other one. So I just borrow a little bit of one of them and paste it on the other one. By the way, I have changed slightly one note because I don't really wish to play the exact notes of this example. Now I want to take a different example. Let's go to bar 6. In bar 6 we have a syncope. A syncope that you may leave as it is, you may do an ornament. You are allowed to break the contrapoint to do another voice if you wish to. In this case, a natural way to break this contrapoint would be this. Once you have this, it is much easier to go and find a copy of these new intervals that we have. For example, let's take page 11 of our book. In the explanation, we have here several downstep movements. Bovicelli describes different ways to ornament this kind of movement. Here we see, for instance, a beautiful example. Where you see this sign, you should add a trillo. In a similar way, if you see bar 16, we could also break here our contrapoint and make a new kind of line, of which we have several examples in either page 11 again or page 23. Right after, we have the first cadence. These kind of cadential movements are to be found all over the place in our book. However, they might not be precisely as written here. We might have to adjust some things. Let's see a little example. In the handout of Pia Pretorius, in page 20, you find several cadences similar to this, from which you can take any idea you like. In page 28 of our Bovicelli book, you have several options for cadences as well. Just be careful. If you follow the exact soggetto, the exact original cadence that Bovicelli suggests, you may end up doing parallel fifths with the bass or doing a wrong movement in the contrapoint. So you want to keep, in this case at least, the original contrapoint and change the second note, this one, into an F sharp to ensure you are not going wrong with the contrapoint. Another example of how to break counterpoint is in bar 52. Here we have a dotted semi-brief. By just erasing that dot and replacing it by a minim, we create a down step movement that can be again used with any of the combinations that we find in Bovicelli. Furthermore, finally, from the end of bar 52 to bar 54, we find a cadence that is practically exact to that of page 28 of Bovicelli's book. Be careful, the harmonies may change, so some of the examples might need to be adjusted. And the last example from me, the very last long note on the sopran line, if you are singing the sopran. Bovicelli does give a whole page with long notes, and in the beginning, in the avvertimenti intorno alle note, that is advice regarding the notes, he also places a long note with two different diminutions for it, and he does say that you must be careful with the harmonies that might be below that note. So to save your time, I have tried to paste or to cut and paste all the examples given by Bovicelli in this particular case of Victoria, and I was not successful. I could eventually cut a little bit of one of the examples and paste with another one and make something that could work, and that's precisely what we would like to hear from you. Here I have my solution. I am using in this case only the two examples from the avvertimenti in page 8. Of course, if you prefer Suzanne Onjur for your diminutions, the principle of cut and paste remains the same. Look for ideas in ascending intervals of a third or a second or the ascending scales of Bovicelli's book. I just want to add here some things that seem to be a little more obvious in this piece. For instance, the cadence of measure 28 could easily go to the high octave. As we have already mentioned, you will find several examples of cadences both in the handouts of the competition and in several places in Bovicelli's book. Finally, stealing notes or intervals from other voices, as perhaps one might wish in the last cadence of this last chanson, is up to you. Octavating or accidentally resulting in not allowed intervals is a fact in some of the surviving examples from these times. So if you want to place intervals in different octaves, or if you want to cross from one voice to the other, a la bastarda, just try that any incorrect intervals are not too obvious. Have you found, for example, the parallel fifths that I played in my version of the final cadence of Victoria's work? We wish you good luck. We hope you have fun writing and singing diminutions in Bovicelli style, and we are very much looking forward for your diminutions.